So the Srimad Bhagavatam was written down roughly 5,000 years ago, and it's been handed down since time immemorial, this sacred information, transcendental information. And there's many volumes, about 11 volumes, maybe 12. And in each volume there's usually 3 books. So this is in the 5th volume. And we talk here a lot about not being the body and not being the mind, and the trouble that our mind causes us in our daily life, the grief, excuse me, the grief that our mind can cause us. And you might think, and like I've heard this before, but you know, even companies like Coca-Cola or you know, the big companies, Nike or whatever, you know, they still promote their stuff all the time. Right? They still put millions of dollars into advertising just to make sure you're going to get this message. And so all day long, and in our daily lives, we're getting a message that you are this body and you are your mind, and just whatever your senses call for, whatever they demand, follow them and you'll get happy, right? Just do it, right? Isn't that the Nike's thing? Just do it, you know? And so we're getting this kind of message all the time. And so the message, a spiritual message, and understanding our real essence and our real nature, where we fit into the scheme of things, who we are, why we're here in this material world, what happens after this life, you know, these kinds of transcendental or spiritual subject matters, you know, end up being just a really small part of our daily life. And so we can wonder, you know, how sometimes we kind of lose our way spiritually. You know, it's because the whole world is going a different direction, and so it's really important that we keep hearing those things. And, you know, sometimes they just kind of hit you more than others. You know, sometimes it's kind of like, oh yeah, right, you know. So it's important for us to hear this sacred information, spiritual knowledge. So in this 5th canto describes this uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. And we might think, well, I don't have an uncontrolled mind, you know. But seriously, we all have a mind that's just out of control. We may be able to control it here and there, get little bits, but you know, the mind is really stubborn, and like it describes here, it's really strong. So Lao Tzu said, all the miseries that we experience are due to this body, and included in that is the mind. So the uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful, and it will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. So when you say the mind is not factual, it's very strong. We're immersed in the activities in our mind, our thoughts and stuff all the time. And one way of being able to try and get an understanding of it is sometimes you've woken up and you've had a really, like being a disturbing dream, or just something that was, maybe it's just before you woke up, so it's like really clear in your mind. And it's like a whole nother world that you were living in, right? And then you wake up and then it's kind of like it's still there. You remember, you all experience that, right? It's quite strong, and you know, it's sort of like, oh, that's right, you know, that's not what's happening, you know. Here I am in my bedroom, you know, it's like none of that. So it's like just all happening in our mind. You know, there was nothing about it that was factual. Your body was lying down in bed and your mind was on another planet, basically, right? It's going another whole world altogether, yeah? And when we're dreaming, we're in there, you know, we're totally immersed in whatever's going on. It's all it is going on in our mind, right? That's how how amazing the mind is. It just has this, it's kind of like a world of its own, you know. So that's our, our mind. And so it covers the mind, conditioned mind, covers the constitutional position of the soul. I mean, the constitutional position of the soul is like, what does that mean? Okay, that's our true spiritual nature. So our mind, when it's materially molded or materially conditioned, it covers who we really are. It covers our eternal spiritual nature, which is to be blissful, it's happy, and it's, you know, in full knowledge of who we really are. You know, our eternal life, you know, another world altogether. So that's what the mind does. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. Therefore, please try to conquer the mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual teacher and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. And then Bhaktivedanta Swami describes, there's one really easy way in which the mind can be conquered, and that is by neglect. You don't listen to it, you don't follow it. It's just like, you know, in the mind, so sometimes people will go to those like 10-day silent retreats so that they can just be living there with their mind. No, that's actually not why they go there, but that's what happens. You go there, and when you're by yourself, you're not seeing stuff, you're not able to speak, you're not able to communicate, you're not able to use your eyes to communicate with somebody. You know, like our eyes can be quite full of expression at times. You know, you're not able to kind of immerse yourself in any of the senses. So the mind is just there to torment you, basically. You're just there living with your mind. Right? And that's the greatest form of punishment in the prison system, is to put a person in solitary confinement so that they can just be there with their mind. Right? That's the worst thing that they can do for somebody. And so we can think, oh, I like being by myself, you know, I'm happy with my own company, but try it long term, confined, and that's all you've got. And if we haven't trained our mind spiritually, then it can really lead a person on a pretty bad trip, right? Really, a person can become very depressed, can become quite disturbed. So learning how to just neglect the mind, you know, when it's coming through with, but what about this, or I think this, or I want this, and you just, it's like, no, you know, it's like you hear it, and you're not going to follow, you're not going to fight it, you're not going to, you know, just neglect, just, you know. We've all experienced somebody doing that to us at some point in time. You know, you're saying something and they just don't hear you. So that's what we've got to do with our mind. Right? So the mind is always telling us to do this or that. Therefore, we should become very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. Gradually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It is not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Okay? So learning how to control the mind. So this is a basic instruction in all the Vedic text. If one does not do so, one is doomed to follow the dictations of the mind. The mind will automatically be controlled if we place it in the service of the Supreme Soul. And the whole chapter is full of instructions on how to deal with the mind. So, but it's the process of chanting is an easy way to get your mind off, you know, wherever it's going, and to put it onto transcendental sound. It's the easiest thing you can do to control your mind and to give it that peace and spiritual nourishment, so that the hankering and the desires and the conditioning will actually be overcome. Right? So whenever we find that our mind's going into a sad place, it's going into a depressed place, it's going into fears and anxieties, and what if this happens, and what if this doesn't happen, and the mind's going to go on all sorts of things. And so whenever we become aware of our mind going off on a tangent, and just bring it back and focus on the sound of the mantra and figure, there's no point in projecting into the future. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So just don't go there. Just neglect the mind and go, okay, I want to control my mind. I'm going to use my mind for my spiritual benefit, my spiritual well-being. Thank you.